Okay, this next problem, it involves more than just the circle equation. We're going to need the midpoint equation as well. Right, so this one, the circle, we are told it has diameter with endpoints -9, -5, and 7, 7. Right. So what diameter means, you're probably familiar with the diameter being twice the length of the radius. Just to give you a little visual, if you have 2 points that are on the diameter of a circle, really, if you connect these 2 points with a straight line, the midpoint of the diameter is the center of the circle. Right, and that's very important for us because we know from the previous problem that we want the center of the circle and the radius. 99% of the time when you're given a problem dealing with a circle, you want to find the center first if you need to find both, and then find the radius afterwards. Right, so we are going to find the center of this circle by finding the midpoint of the 2 points. All right, so I'll remind you the midpoint formula is x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Right, you can set it up and do it all together or separated like I did last section. So I'm going to do it like that, x1 plus x2 over 2. If you want to label like we did before, go ahead and do that. So x1 is -9 and x2 is 7. -9 plus 2 is -2. And then -2 over 2 is -1. So that's the x value of the center. The y value of the center, we're going to add the y values together and divide by 2. And our y values, y1 is -5, y2 is 7. -5 plus 7 is +2, divided by 2 is 1. Right, so what we have here, we have our center is -1, 1. As far as the letters of our equation go, it's h and k. So h is -1, k is 1. So the equation of a circle, once again, I'll write that down because it's good to write down the formulas when you're learning them. We have x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. And now we're going to plug in our h and k that we just figured out. We do this first, then we'll be able to find r next. All right, so h is -1. When we plug in a negative in here, it becomes positive. We got x plus 1 squared plus, and then y minus k, k is 1, so we're going to have y minus 1 squared equals r squared. Right, now once you've found h and k, finding r isn't very bad at all. All you have to do is pick either of your points, -9, -5, or 7, 7, and plug them in for x and y. And it doesn't matter which one you choose. I'm going to do 7, 7 because I just prefer positive numbers over negative, less likely to make a mistake. All right, so we got 7 plus 1 squared plus 7 minus 1 squared equals r squared. 7 plus 1 is 8. 8 squared is 64, plus 7 minus 1 is 6. 6 squared is 36, equals r squared. And then 64 plus 36 is 100. So 100 equals r squared. Now you don't actually have to find r unless the question asks for r because your formula has r squared in it. So we can actually just plug in for r squared here. You don't need to figure out r. You can see that r is 10 because we do the square root, but we don't actually need it. All we need to do is plug that in. We got x plus 1 squared plus y minus 1 squared equals r squared. We figured out r squared should be 100. Right, so you can see what r squared is from the equation we made, what we figured out. R equals 10 because it's the square root of 100, but it's not needed. Right, so if your r squared was more of a weird number like 51, the square root of 51 isn't a nice number, but you would just plug in the 51 for r squared. All right, so the general approach to solving problems with circles, if you're not given the center, find the center. Usually it's going to be this way. And then plug in a point with this inside your equation to figure out your r, or r squared. All right, in this section, next section, it's not the final section, I don't know why I wrote that, but in this section, we're going to talk about the graphs of circles. First, we're going to make sure if we're looking at a graph of a circle, we can write the equation. So it says for the following graphs, give the equation of the circle in standard form. Standard form is just that equation from before, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Now what you want to do is look at your circle graph. Where does it look like the center is? And then from there, what is the radius? But this first one here, it looks like the center is right in the middle. But if you want to be sure, you can look from left to right or top to bottom and go halfway between. So from left, the farthest left it is over here is at -6. The farthest right it's at +6. Halfway between that is 0. So that is the center. Happens to be the origin, so it's 0, 0. And then the radius is the distance from the center to any point, but you want to go straight up or down, left or right, to see that the radius should be 6. We're going from 0 to -6, so we're moving 6. But all we have to do, once we realize that, is plug it in. Remember the coordinates for the center are hk, so we plug that in. X and y stick around. H is 0. Y minus k, which is 0, equals r squared. R is 6. Now when you have 0 for h or k, you definitely want to simplify them by basically getting rid of them. X minus 0 is just x, so this is x squared. Y minus 0 is just y, so this is y squared, equals 6 squared, which is 36. And so whenever the center has a 0 in it, like just x being the center at 0, you'll see just x squared, and that's okay. You don't want to write x minus 0 squared. It's messier. Right, but just have one more that's moved away from the center because most are not going to be centered at the origin. But here we have our circle. Once again, I just like to do left right because it's easier for me to see. If you want to look from top to bottom, it's the same thing. Halfway between the leftmost point 1 and rightmost point 5 is 3. So our center is right here. And the coordinates, x is 3, y is 0. We're on the x-axis. You might not be on an axis at all. That's okay too. So this is our h is 3 and our k is 0. And then the radius, just go from the center to either left, right, up, or down. It'll all be the same. The radius moving from 3 to 1 is 2. All right, so since I have the formula written right there, I'm not going to rewrite it. But we have x minus h, which is 3 squared, plus y minus k, which is 0, squared equals r squared. Once again, simplify. You might simplify as you plug it in the first time. X minus 3 is simplified. Y minus 0 is just y. That's y squared equals 2 squared, which is 4. And this is the standard form of our circle. All right, the next little bit, we just have one problem here. We want to draw the circle for the given equation by identifying the center. And the way you would do it by hand is with 4 other points to kind of guide your circle. In the graphing tool on the homework, you only have to plot the center and 1 other point. Right? But really what you'd want to do is point out what is the center and what is the radius, because the radius is going to tell you how to figure out that extra point. So our equation here, x minus 1 squared plus y plus 3 squared equals 4. If you compare it with our formula, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, we should see that h is 1 because of the minus signs matching. Since we have a plus 3 here, k is negative 3. And since r squared is 4, r equals 2. So first, plot the center. We got at x equals 1 and y equals negative 3, we got the center. The center is not actually on the circle, but it's how the whole circle is drawn. And then the radius for this problem is 2. So what we want to do is move up, down, left, and right 2 of the center. All right, so from the center, we'll have a point here, up 2. From the center, we can move down 2 and have a point here. We can move left 2, and we can move right 2. And that should help you at least draw a somewhat accurate circle by hand. You know, I'm definitely not even good by hand, and doing this on the computer is even harder for me. But the way the homework works, if you plot the center, then you plot either one of these 4 points, it doesn't matter which one, it'll make the circle for you. So for the homework, we only need one other. Right, so for the homework, if you just plotted the center and then went up 2 and plotted that point, it'll form the circle for you. All right, so the last thing in this section is called completing the square. Basically, you can be given the equation of a circle that's not in standard form, but you might be asked, what is the center? What is the radius? And you have to get it in standard form. You're not going to be able to just guess it. So it says for the following circle, find the standard form of the circle, then give its radius and center. And you'll notice what we have here, we have x squared and y squared, but we also have the 6x and 8y. So the idea, this is very important, is how you organize your work when you complete the square. So the first thing I do is whatever doesn't have an x or y with it, x squared or y squared, there's the number here, subtract or add the number to the other side. You don't have to do this first, but I just like to make sure I'm really organized. So I subtract 24 from each side. And I got x squared plus 6x plus y squared plus 8y equals negative 24. All right, the next thing what you want to do, group the x's together and then add a blank. And do the same thing with the y's. And I'll show you what I mean by add a blank. is initially going to make it look way messier, but it'll make everything easier because it helps us organize. So we got x squared plus 6x, and then I'm going to add a blank. Then I'm going to do the same thing for the y's, plus y squared plus 8y, and then I'm going to add a blank. And the important thing is we're going to be adding numbers in the blanks, as you might expect. If we add it to one side, we must add it to the other. So I'm going to also have a blank for each one. So whatever number I put here in the purple spot, I'm going to also put here. Whatever number in the green spot I put here, I'm also going to put here. All right, so this is the completing the square step, is what you add. So in each blank, add b over 2 squared. And if you're curious as to what b is, we referred to it in the solving equations review, but it's the number multiplying just the single power. Which here is just x or y. Not x squared, not y squared. Just x or y. So visually, I'm not going to simplify it yet. What I'm going to do is just write it in. We got 6 over 2 squared is what's going to go there, and it's also going to go on the right side. Got to put the same exact thing. And then for the y part, we have 8 for b. So we're going to have 8 over 2 squared added to each one. Now just simplify that number. X squared plus 6x. 6 over 2 is 3, and 3 squared is 9. I'm going to have a 9 there. Plus y squared plus 8y. Plus 8 over 2 is 4, and 4 squared is 16. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just simplify that on the right as well. So we already know that the purple thing is 9, and the green thing is 16. Right. Now, what you're going to be able to do is factor each of these. And it's not only going to be able to be factored, but it's going to be the same factor twice. So if you add the correct number, like I did the 9 here, it should be the same factor twice. And if you don't get the same factor twice, either you're factoring wrong or you added the wrong number. So here we want two numbers to factor this that multiply to 9 and add to 6. If it's got to be the same number, it better be 3, because 3 times 3 is 9, and 3 plus 3 is 6. So that's good. And did we do the right thing for the y? What two numbers multiply to 16 and add to 8? Well, 4 and 4. So we did the thing correctly. Now on the right side, just simplify this number. So 9 plus 16 is 25. Negative 24 plus 25 is 1. It doesn't matter what number this comes out to be. It's just going to be some number. It needs to be positive, though. I will say that. If it's negative, you made a mistake somewhere. Right, but now we are one step away from being done. When we have the same factor twice, we can condense it into that factor being squared. Right, so that's why it has to be the same factor. So x plus 3 times x plus 3 is x plus 3 squared. And then plus y plus 4 times y plus 4 is y plus 4 squared. equals 1. The right side is simplified. And that is the standard form of the circle. And it looks exactly like how it's supposed to look. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Right. Now that's most of the work because we already know how to do the other parts from before. What's the radius and what's the center? Well, the radius is 1 because this is r squared. H is -3, it's x minus h squared is our formula, and k is -4 because it's y minus k. And so these two make the center -3, -4. Right, so you do have 3 parts to the problem. You have to give the standard form and the center and the radius. You may also have to graph it, you may not, it just depends on the problem, but we know how to graph this. Right. So if you've never completed the square before, it is a lot of little steps. Kind of go through the steps in your head, get the number on one side, add in your blanks, and then in each blank add b over 2 squared, what it's supposed to be. Simplify that number, factor, write the 2 factors repeated as a squared thing, and then you have your standard form. But that's it for circles.